everybody. Welcome to another little segment of our YouTube channel, Divine Scarlet and Ray Ray. Today we're going to discuss by request how we can become more vulnerable and how that works within a chart, with what planets we look at for that and how we work with it. We have several different ideas about this. Let's discuss Ray Ray.
Well, vulnerability is something we all fear initially, I feel, and I think vulnerability also goes hand in hand with the unknown, because like being vulnerable is not knowing what is going to happen, what's going to occur, how things are going to pan out in your life and so on and so forth. And that's why in the most intimate of relationships, we also need to get to that place, because you don't know how a relationship is going to pan out. Like life is so unpredictable, and we become so attached to our partners on a human level that there's always that initial fear of loss, and that's a very humane thing to feel. But astrologically speaking, vulnerability to me is symbolized mostly by Chiron. And there's no coincidence that, like in Magi astrology, Chiron is seen as a big player in relationships and marriages as well. It's not looked at in this sort of, a lot of people have a rather grim perception of Chiron. They see it only as their pain or their core wound. Now, it does symbolize that, but as Rumi did say, that the wound is where the light enters us, and you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. That is so true, in my experience of life at least. So yeah, it's about learning how to just allow yourself to feel vulnerable.
To me, I also feel like the moon has to do with it, and because a lot of us have to deal with issues like feeling in charge of our life all the time. A lot of people like to pretend like they are in control of their life all the time. And then you have the opposite kind of people who are just completely in chaos at all moments, and everything is the biggest deal that happens. So it's like there's this in-between phase of, like, for me, I've always had the opposite problem of not looking like I'm vulnerable. I'd like to protect that space of that I am vulnerable and that things do hurt me, and it's all I think it's all my Aries planets. They like to look in control. But on the other hand, there is that space where you want to connect, and you want to connect with these people who understand the same kind of hurts as you. And I think that's why I've gone out of my way recently to make that breakup deck and help people realize that they're not alone. They're not suffering by themselves. In fact, suffering is pretty much what people do. And we all suffer in maybe we know how to deal with it in different ways, but we all suffer the same way. And for me, that's been almost one of the most beautiful things that have connected me with humanity, actually.
Because we need other people in our lives. We need that human connection, click together nicely in a harmonious way.
Yeah. It's almost like that vulnerability point seems to be egoless to me.
Yeah, because you're accepting, how you're feeling. You're honoring, because the ego, well, I don't want to say ego, but I'd rather say negative ego, the negative side of the ego. That's what resists pain. It resists suffering. But once you accept it, it literally teaches you what it needs to teach you, and then it goes away, because nothing stays around until it's taught what it needs to tell you about yourself. And once you've learned that lesson, the emotion does go away.
Yeah.
And some transits can actually, like our friend was just discussing with us before on WhatsApp, there are some transits that can indeed make you feel very vulnerable. Especially if the heavy transits to, like, the second house ruler, for example, or the seventh house ruler, especially, or even the 11th house ruler, because obviously with your friends as well, you've got to be vulnerable, you've got to be open, and You know, it's not just about intimate relationships, it's about relationships as a whole, even your family. You know, it's about, because a lot of people are in some ways naive. They give love and show love and affection to a lot of their friends. But when it comes to their family, there's some naivety in expressing how they, you know, love and appreciate each other. And unfortunately, there are many cases where, you know, a person's family members pass away before they actually got the chance to tell them how much they actually care and appreciate them. And there's no better feeling, is there, than somebody just telling you how much they appreciate your presence in their lives, you know, because life passes us by, you know, really fast. And the older we get, our perception of time speeds up. So, you know, life is a lot shorter than we think.
So I felt like I've seen people be incredibly vulnerable but try to also put up a very strong self kind of vibe when they were having some kind of Venus Pluto transit, and Pluto being the transit, because that's going to be, that of course is going to take like a year and a half to get through. So it's really it's really going to sink deeply into that person to show that person, you know, those cracks, to show that person if something is working out or not. And also, I think the moon and Chiron for sure as well. I mean, I feel like those are some of the key planets when
Venus too. Venus, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the Venus, Pluto, you know, moon, Pluto, and even, you know, Chiron, anything with Chiron.
Yeah, Uranus on your Chiron.
It was Uranus going over my Chiron, and I don't know, I what ended up happening was my grandfather died, and mine's in the 4th house. And I also think, so for me, my Chiron has a lot to do with my root, my family. So where you look at that Chiron is like where you have that hurt from like a very young age. And I think for me, it stems from seeing my parents try to raise me with a little bit of money and seeing them struggle. And I was like, you know, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to struggle. So, and also they seemed like to be, and here's the worst word for an Aries, is feeling stuck in a place. And I like freedom. I like to go where I want when I want to go somewhere, and nothing tying me down. So for me, that's my Chiron. I don't know how you see your Chiron.
Well, mine's in the 11th house, and my parents actually done quite a good job raising me, I feel. Most of my quote-unquote wounds actually came from my teenage years, hanging around with my friends. I ended up on drugs. I'm not blaming them or anything. It's just the influence of society and peer pressure can get to you, especially when you don't know who you are. And who knows who they are when they're a teenager? No one. So, but I also believe that everyone has a chink in their armor, you know, and that's fine. But I've also noticed that Chiron can actually be a really awesome planet too. Well, asteroid, whatever, body. Shall we call it a body? I don't know. But when you actually learn from it, it becomes a point of power. And I think, you know, where you're most vulnerable is your place of power, because it's where you're most vulnerable that you're going to learn the most. It's where you're most vulnerable that your potential lies, because if you actually overcome that, you know, then of course you become the very best version of yourself. You know, so it's about honoring our emotions and honoring that. Honoring our humanity is to be vulnerable, in my opinion.
It's better to celebrate your death than it is your birthday, right? Because it's all the things that you've done and you've accomplished, and the things that like the nice things that you've done, you know? And so to me, I have like a whole wall of pictures of people who have passed on more recently than, I'm just getting to the age where they're starting to drop now. And it's like, to me, it's about like honoring them and honoring their ideas, and just thinking about them, keeping their ideas alive. And, you know, especially recently with my whole, my mom's husband passed away recently. So I'm dealing with that with her, and so he loved cooking, so we're making like a cookbook for him from his whole family.
Yeah, that's a great way of honoring someone, because like my mother's father, my grandfather, was obsessed with Elvis. His bedroom was literally an Elvis shrine, okay? And like every 6th of November, his birthday's 3 days after mine. She plays Elvis like on the radio for him, like, you know, just to honor him, and like just the little things like that, you know, because they don't leave us. We just can't perceive them with our physicality. That's all it is. They just, I just don't think they're allowed to tell us too much, because if we just knew everything about this, the nature of existence, and that it's a guarantee that we're going to live on, then would we really strive to live our best life if we knew? Probably not. Probably not. And maybe that would paralyze us. You know, maybe the mystery is what drives us, what fuels us, you know, to want to actually live our best life.
Yeah, no, so any last thoughts you have on vulnerability and how to actually, when you're going through like a situation where you're feeling mad or like you want to hide or shy away from your feeling, is there any kind of like examples you can give about how to stop and open up or anything like that?
Well, first of all, my book teaches all of this, so the link will be in the description below if you're interested in that. But also, you know, just learning how to honor the present moment, and what that really means is to honor the way you're feeling in that moment. So, you know, to honor whatever you're feeling. If you've been triggered by somebody's actions, then acknowledging that, you know, you're allowing somebody's actions to determine your state of being, and that's okay too. We all do it at times. You know, the issue isn't the fact that you've been triggered or not. What the issue is, how long are you going to dwell in that emotion? Are you actually going to deal with it, or are you going to allow it to turn into bitterness and resentment? Because you either get bitter or you get better in life. That's it. So you have that choice when you are triggered. And if you can learn how to just accept your emotions and listen to what they're telling you, emotion and pain is a messenger. It's telling you, it's reflecting onto you, you know, the aspects of yourselves that you've not yet fully accepted or healed. So listen to what your body is telling you. That's all I've got to say, really.
Okay. Well, thank you. And we will
Thank you.
see you on the next segment. I hope you join us.